What does inclusion really mean? How does one of the world's biggest banks handle representation on a global scale? And why is the question of brand transparency a vital one? You're listening to CX Insider, and today we find out. Hey everyone, welcome to the podcast with me, your host, Marcel. In this episode, we sat down with Donata Peksa, Head of Brand Experience at HSBC, to discuss the challenges that come with her role and explore how HSBC are approaching today's biggest issues, from diversity to climate change and economic crisis. Enjoy the conversation, and if you do, why not subscribe to our YouTube channel for CX Insider's best content, or share the episode and leave a comment down below to keep the talks going. By the way, this podcast is brought to you by ACF Technologies, global leaders in customer experience management solutions. All right, Donata, thank you very much for coming on the podcast. It's lovely to meet you. Would you like to tell us a bit about who you are and what you do?
Yeah, absolutely. So thank you very much for having me. Really great opportunity. And so my name is Donata Peksa, and I look after global brand experience for HSBC. So I'm based in London, part of the global team. I've been in London for about 10 years, but I'm actually originally from Poland. I've worked in a number of different countries, lived in a number of different countries. So I'd like to think that I'm a pretty good fit for HSBC, because HSBC is a very international brand. And I want to think that I've got an internationalist mindset that is kind of in the DNA of the company. So my background is actually, funnily enough, in linguistics, economics, and European studies. But then after uni, I gravitated towards financial services, as I think a lot of people do, a bit unintentionally. And so, 16 years later, I'm still in financial services, having done a number of different roles on the business side, and then moved to marketing a few years ago. So head of brand experience is an all-encompassing role, you might think. It's a very broad term. In a nutshell, it's basically a concept that is quite related to customer experience, and it basically denotes the kind of feelings, reactions, and ideas that a consumer gets after being part of an interaction with a brand. And that interaction influences a future purchase, either negatively or positively. So brand experience is not fully controlled by the company or by the brand. There are many different factors that can influence that brand experience. There could be an article in the paper, there could be a negative experience on the app, there could potentially be, someone saying or doing something controversial that will all impact positively or negatively the perception of the brand in the eyes of the consumer. So obviously my task, my exercise, my job, my responsibility is to deliver intentionally the best possible experience to consumers, to either our existing customers or our prospective customers, to the employees, to the communities we serve, because that positive brand experience equals new customers, new opportunities, acquisition, consideration, and obviously better growth for the company.
And HSBC recently went through a brand strategy update, right? Could you walk us through a bit about what that entails?
Yeah, absolutely. So it has been kind of a fairly long journey for HSBC, and the way we wanted to do it is kind of inside out. So initially we went through a company purpose update, and we had refreshed it in 2021. It is now opening up a world of opportunity. And it's both kind of our company principle, company purpose, but it's also our brand promise. So the two of them, for the first time in a very long time, are actually convergent and the same. So for both for our internal colleagues and people, but also for our consumers. It was a result of an extensive consultation with, again, both colleagues and customers around the globe, because it had to be representative of our 64 plus countries. And we have been kind of really happy with the way it has landed with our people. And the colleagues really felt like they contributed to it. They felt that it was part of the company's DNA. It was part of the vision of the company. And obviously opening up a world of opportunity has always been the role of HSBC, because we are present in so many markets. We really kind of leverage those opportunities, and we connected our customers to those opportunities. So I think it had a completely transformative impact on the organization. But more personally and more selfishly, it has also really helped me with my job, because now I really kind of have that single-minded brand purpose that we're kind of trying to deliver. And I think that really helped inform our company's story and what is it that we're trying to convey, what is it that we're trying to promise. And also it really helped to have a target audience defined before the process even started, because we know what we're saying, we know who we're saying it to.
That's fascinating. From what I've seen in the conversation I've had recently, employee experience has really risen in its importance in the overall brand strategy for many companies. And I think probably today is like, at its highest that I've ever seen in terms of people focusing on it. So if I could ask, is there any one initiative or thing that you've done at HSBC, in particular with the employees, that you're either proud of or is going well, or maybe not well, but whatever you want to share? Is there anything that stands out?
So one of the recent pieces of work that we have developed within our team was to bring that brand promise to life through a brand narrative and a campaign. So we developed last year a brand narrative, a brand platform that it was called Open Questions. We are very proud of that work because it was very extensively tested with our customers around the globe.
Okay.
But it's also quite an interesting creative narrative because open questions are generally thought-provoking. People love to be answering questions, asked questions. It means that it's a dialogue, it's a two-way conversation with people that are listening to us. And because we are in a world with, increasing levels of uncertainty, questions are everywhere, and not everyone has, is able to answer those. But I think it's about asking questions. That's where the power of questions lies. So we've developed, a really beautiful creative route, and we launched it in our firstly in our airports. So it's live in some of our major hubs such as Hong Kong, UK, Singapore, China. So you will see it in jet bridges if you travel, and it's basically a super priming campaign, which means that it's to really raise people's awareness of HSBC, but it's also to really attract their attention, to really grab their view whilst they're traveling. The questions are from across our 4 strategic pillars. So they're about international connectivity, they are about legacy, about wealth, they're about diversity and inclusion, they're about human connections, they're about digitization, but especially kind of technology trends such as, the increasing power of AI. And they're also about sustainability, inevitably, because that's one of the strategic pillars. So again, sustainability, transitioning to net zero.
I feel like HSBC always seem to be really hitting the main points in the world at the time, because whenever I travel and I go to the airport, you always see the tunnel as you're boarding the plane. They've always got really good messaging. I'm always reading it thinking, that's really, and that one's really good. And then that's like a human, it's always so accurate, I think, to the time. So
that's really great.
That's credit to you and your team and stuff.
Really great to hear.
As the head of brand experience for such a massively global and mature brand, Donata faces an incredible array of challenges in maintaining the legacy behind it. How does she approach her role? And is it plausible to uphold consistency across such a matrix world?
I consider myself a bit of a brand steward or custodian. The brand has been around for over 155 years and still counting, and I will only be around for, a very small part of that time. So I think my responsibility is to look after it, to protect it, to do the best I can to tell the brand story in a powerful way that really engages our audience. My role is to make sure that there is this kind of emotional connection that we can create, because banking as an industry, as a category, is a fairly utilitarian service, right? So obviously we need to find that way and that connection with our consumers, with our prospects, with our people, that really strikes that emotional chord. The ability to connect with the mindset of the brand, which is very kind of open-minded, which is very kind of tolerant, very, very diverse. It's a real opportunity. However, it obviously comes with hurdles and a lot of challenges. It's a huge organization. It has, almost over 200,000 employees.
Wow.
There are multiple lines of business. So as you can imagine, it's like an oil tanker. It's really difficult to change the direction of travel. There are many, layers of this organization, and just the ability to work in a fairly matrix environment, and that kind of culture of consensus is really important. So I would say, on one hand, honor and absolute kind of sense of accountability and responsibility. On the other hand, there is obviously a huge organization, and what comes with size and reach is all very visible and tangible.
Managing these types of challenges can be highly difficult. Optimizing your customer flow, for example, is crucial to creating amazing customer experiences. But where does one start? Through ACF Technologies solutions, your customer journeys can reach new heights of success by implementing tailored, industry-leading software that can handle all your needs from appointment booking to virtual queuing and even event management. Want to find out more about how ACF can elevate your CX strategy? Check the link in the description or head over to acftechnologies.com.
On the note of challenges, you have a global brand, but you certainly localize it to markets. How do you manage that? Because there's an element, I guess, of your brand, which is, we want to keep this consistent across every market, the 60, 65 markets. But then there's also massive benefit and I guess almost need to localize. Is that something that you...
Yeah, absolutely. You're, 100% right. Obviously, when you are set in London and, you are part of the global team, you need to be very mindful and very sensitive to those local nuances. So the way we operate is through very close partnerships with the markets that we work with. So we develop a global narrative and global brand design system, which is fairly flexible. So we kind of consider it to be, an ecosystem or a sandbox within which our marketeers in the markets can play.
Right.
And that global narrative is very closely linked to the company purpose, to our brand purpose, to our strategic pillars, and to our values. But then each of the markets has their own business objectives. They have their own proof points or reasons to believe, their own initiatives that support each of these pillars. And not all the 4 pillars are equally important for each market. So what they then need to do, and we help them in that process, is to look at the global narrative, look at the global assets, look at their local strategy, and basically find an inflection of that global strategy, that narrative, the local narrative that really works for them, that really tells that story. So they will then have to go through similar kind of audience analysis. They will kind of list their own proof points and reasons to believe. And then through a process that we have done in numerous markets over a period of probably 3 to 6 months, we work out that local narrative. But it's not a local brand strategy. It's a global brand strategy that is localized to local needs, and that's pretty much how that setup and arrangement works.
So that's like the operating model, isn't it, behind it, where you have okay, fascinating.
And I suppose, in different areas, those pillars aren't always going to apply. Like, for example, with diversity and inclusion, different markets will have kind of different expectations or their own sort of cultures, that obviously might conflict with what you have in your global brand strategy. So in terms of localizing the narrative, how do you keep the global strategy still at the heart without compromising it or trying to adapt too much to one place and then losing the brand focus at the same time?
It's a very timely question, and we've had a number of conversations with our various markets about diversity and inclusion guidelines, which we've kind of launched as a team. They have been extensively tested with our kind of agency partners, but also some of the agencies that help us specifically with diversity and inclusion. I think what's really important is to have those conversations and dialogues and to understand really well the lay of the land in each of the markets. So just to give you some examples, when we were launching the airport campaign, a lot of the creatives in the airport campaign are very diverse. So they include very diverse talent. Some of them have people with disabilities. Some of them, depict non-binary people. And so we had a number of conversations with the markets in order for them to be comfortable choosing the right suite of executions from a wide range of, 175 executions. And obviously some markets were able to push it a bit further, such as Canada or UK or Australia. And then some other markets like Singapore, we basically just had to make a bit of a statement, but not everything was acceptable in that market. And obviously we have to play by the local rules as well. For in this particular instance, these executions have to be approved by the airport authority. So where we're trying to really work out a consensus is to push it a bit further than perhaps what is comfortable and typical and customary in the marketplace, but obviously be very respectful of the local nuances, of the local culture, and of the local sensitivity as well.
Yeah.
And so far it has worked pretty well, and we have received quite a lot of praise from certain markets where people were saying, I'm really happy to be an HSBC customer because it feels to me like you are pushing that envelope a bit further, and that is quite a unique thing. And whether it's being a bit more vocal during Pride Month, or whether it's being a bit more vocal about accessibility and about kind of, you know, supporting people with disabilities, I think we are trying to do the best we can in terms of bringing those themes to the fore. But I will not pretend like it's an easy conversation, and I will not pretend like it's always a successful one. So obviously we're on a journey.
It's difficult. These are very, very complex topics across the world, but they need to, you know, there's so many areas of opportunity for us to move forward, and I think it's initiatives like that does move the needle. Slowly in some places, faster in others, but it certainly moves the needle. So it's important to keep doing it.
Nobody's perfect. We get things right and we get things wrong, but acknowledging your missteps is the first stage of improvement. In that sense, Donata believes brands should be more like humans. HSBC strive to support environmentally progressive initiatives, yet they've recently faced negative media coverage surrounding their campaigns. And though transparency is key to building long-term customer trust and loyalty, this is both a controversial and complex issue. So let's find out what Donata thinks about it all.
There is a huge expectation of brands and generally kind of public figures to be frank, honest, genuine, and transparent. And I think there's even more need of that and more appetite for it in the world that we live in and in the landscape that we live in, which is, you know, full of misinformation, full of fake news, very cluttered with different sources of information. And it's very difficult, I think, for everyone to really assess which information is trustworthy and which isn't. I think it also is a generational thing where, you know, generation of millennials or Generation Z really trusts brands on the back of what they do rather than on the back of what they say. So if you make a statement and that statement is later proved, you know, wrong, or it's or your actions don't corroborate that statement, then obviously the level of trust in your brand is completely diminished. So I think brands are also mindful of that and are putting in place, and we are putting in place, a whole number of guidelines and guidance for people who develop communications within HSBC. So I think presenting that two-sided and balanced view where whenever you are, you know, you are praising yourself or you're kind of complimenting yourself is very important. I think comprehension is another key element. So you cannot be issuing communications that are not clear to people. And by this, I mean both marketing communications, but more importantly, customer communication. So if someone doesn't understand what you are saying, they don't understand the contract that you asked them to sign, well, that's not right, and that's not fair. So we have a lot of initiatives around accessible communications and making sure that, you know, the tone of voice that we use is very simple, very human, very customer centric. The content must be fully verified. So what you're saying has to be backed up by relevant sources. It has to be backed up by case studies. You know, we must only say things that are factually correct, and we have a very robust approval process in place to make that happen. That includes compliance, legal, ad control, etc. I think it has to be also kept relevant. So again, you wouldn't be saying, you wouldn't be communicating to people information that doesn't add value to them. So if it's just for the sake of saying something, but it's not benefit driven, it's not benefit led, it's not either informative or useful or interesting, then I would probably just not communicate at all. And I think that also applies not just to communications, but to the imagery you use. So the imagery has to really be telling the story, and you can't be potentially misdirecting people or covering anything up with imagery as well. So these are kind of the layers, I suppose, of protocols that we have in place. But like you say, sometimes we get it right, sometimes we get it wrong, and, you know, humans and brands are generally imperfect. So
So it's good to kind of reflect that as a brand, so that people can relate to it more, because, you know, everyone has their own flaws, and so seeing a brand really acknowledge that and move forward with that in mind, I think it's great for building that customer trust. And also in an age of, social media and everything, I think people are much more aware of that, a lot more knowledgeable about the companies they interact with. And so you really do have to be, on your game about it and make sure that you are being mindful of these topics, because it can easily come back, through just like a simple comment or on Twitter or anything, and it will just blow up. And then, so it's kind of becoming increasingly important, I think.
How do you handle that then? Like from a brand perspective, social media must be a blessing and a curse. Do you have an approach to that, or do you see it as sort of that is just how people communicate? Social media, we have this happening at the moment where a lot of organizations and individuals are being sort of like, I don't know, cancelled or whatever the term is. People are really going after them using social media. How do you face that challenge?
So I think we have a pretty clear kind of approach and attitude to community management on our social media. So on the channels that we as a team kind of have in our responsibility and remit, if there is a specific comment from a customer or client that requires any follow-up action. So for example, there is a complaint that they have, or potentially they have been delivered a negative experience or a negative product or service experience, then we direct them to the right team that will address that will help solve it. When it's just kind of comments around around HSBC as a brand, or when comments under our posts, we generally keep our engagement to a minimum. We don't necessarily start conversations, dialogue with our audiences on social media, because as you say, it probably is not going to end there. There are many different reasons and rationale for these comments, and they all often come from various different places, and it could be a never-ending discussion. And sometimes there is no, they're posted without a real need for a discussion. They are just posted because they can. But it's obviously open, so everyone can see them. Everyone can see what the comments are. We are not hiding anything, and we're definitely not, not removing them.
No, yeah. People like to vent on social media,
and they have it's their prerogative.
Yeah. I guess you work so hard to try and deliver the best customer experience, let's say, to every customer, but with millions and millions of customers across the world, occasionally, it doesn't go to plan. But it sounds like you have the right core values in place that everyone knows this is how we handle this and this is the best way to do it. And
well, it's a way to do it. I think other brands will probably get into a slightly more kind of engaged conversation within their social media, and that's a way as well. That's a strategy.
Some brands like go and insult the commenters back, or like make it a whole joke out of it and then that's what gets them even more exposure. And it's but that doesn't work for everyone, obviously. In a way, promoting diversity and inclusion should also mean that you're considerate and accepting of others who view the world differently, and those whose perspectives and philosophy differ from your own. This stance of inclusion resonates across multiple pillars of society, including customers with various economic situations too. In our time of inflation, how is HSBC tackling the cost of living crisis from a customer experience angle?
The way we react to this landscape will vary slightly market by market. But for everyone, the crisis will manifest itself in a slightly different way, which is why there isn't really a one-size-fits-all approach or answer to it. The best way to approach it is really to just communicate that there are ways and there are means and there are solutions, and you just need to encourage people through call to action to have that conversation. And then whatever your specific situation is, there are solutions for that. And then in other markets, there might be slightly different problems. So I think it all needs to start with a very robust social listening and research exercise, just to understand what are the top 5 pain points that people are struggling with as part of that cost of living crisis, and then to really manage the proposition accordingly first, and then to develop a campaign around it. But it has to be an orchestrated effort between brand marketing, product, proposition team, and obviously, and it has to be aligned with the strategy of the bank all together. The thing is, it has to be customized, right? It has to be personalized, and that's why it varies from one market to another.
That makes a lot of sense. I think definitely one thing I've picked up over the years with customer experience is brand image and brand equity. It's quite commonly built in the toughest of times. So when the chips are down for a customer, i.e. they face a challenge or they're stuck and they're in a difficult situation, especially in a financial sense, that's when your brand, if it then plays a positive role and a helping role, that's when I think you create the most positive brand experience for the long term. That's where you know, I don't know what you think, but like that's how I sort of see it. Because it's good when you look at a brand when the times are good, but when the times are not so good, that's when, you know.
Yeah, I think it's a very valid observation. Completely agree with that. I would say it's a little bit like with people, right?
Yeah.
It's usually in times of personal crisis or difficult periods and rough patches that you see who your real friend is. And if they were there, you know, in the times of need, then you will remember them for a very long time and you will probably stick with them and respect that friendship. And I think it's very similar to the situation of brands. I think there is also another element of it, which is about in times of uncertainty and crises, a lot of people kind of gravitate towards safe havens and you know and safe brands and safe pairs of hands. And I think that's where typically there is kind of a flight to quality and safety.
And that must be obviously more challenging as well because it's such a massive global brand. The impacts of what you do could be, you know, bigger or smaller compared to smaller brands. So like the positives are bigger and the negative backlash might be bigger as well. And I think it all brings it back to that point of diversity and inclusion and transparency that we've been talking about, that when it comes to like an economic crisis as well, you have to be considerate about all those things and about how, you know, different people might react to the services that you're providing through your brand image and how they will perceive you as a result. And like Greg said, these harder times are what will shape that perception for years to come. Thank you for listening. We hope you enjoyed the podcast. And if you did, why not subscribe to our YouTube channel for access to full-length videos and YouTube shorts. You can also like, share, and comment on the episode to keep the conversation going. If you want to join our growing community of thought leaders, head over to LinkedIn and follow us at CX Insider Podcast to stay updated. Thanks again. I've been Marcel and I'll see you in 2 weeks. But for now, enjoy our rapid fire questions. And by the way, this podcast has been brought to you by ACF Technologies, the global leaders in customer experience management solutions. So my first question is, if you could have an unlimited supply of anything, what would that be?
Sleep.
That's a great answer.
Yeah.
Where is your favorite holiday destination?
I love beaches, I would say, in terms of a location, a beach. In terms of a country, probably Spain.
Okay, so Spanish beach.
Yes.
What was the last TV show that you loved watching?
Probably You.
Oh, right, okay.
Yeah. It's a bit dark.
Yeah.
That's a really good one.
I love dark TV
Which season is your favorite?
Probably the first.
Yeah.
Yeah.
It's quite interesting, isn't it? Because it like you feel like empathy for this psychopath, and it's really like it's just
and
a bit
it's
weird.
really disturbing.
Yeah,
It's really disturbing because I don't want to.
But it's really good. It's really so, yeah. What is your favorite snack?
Snickers.
Oh,
Mm.
brilliant!
I agree with you. I think that's my favorite too. Yeah.
Have you tried? Do you like peanut butter?
I love peanut butter.
They have these like little ones that have peanut butter inside as well, and it's so nice.
I think for peanut butter, I always go for Reese. Yeah.
Yeah.
But yeah, I'll try that one as well.
Snickers one, yeah. And my final question: what career did you dream of having when you were younger?
I always wanted to be a singer, but given the fact that I have no voice at all, it just proved very difficult / impossible.
Okay,
That's
fair
cool.
enough.